Welcome to Refresh Daily Podcast. I'm Dawn Herring, creative visionary and strategist. I'm an intuitive watercolor painter, hand letterer, and illustrator, an avid journal keeper, and I am founder of Refresh with Dawn Herring, where finding joy takes center stage. And today I am so excited to have a very, very special guest on today for today's episode called An Empowered Voice. And her name is Laura Volpintesta. Yay! Thank you so much for joining me, Laura. I am so thrilled to have you with us today. And before we get into the interview, I'm going to introduce Laura with her bio. She is an unschooling single mom who loves family, art, and creativity, right up my alley. She believes art is our birthright, amen, and loves multicultural arts as a way to bring people together into shared experiences. Yes. She has an online school for fashion arts at fashionillustrationtribe.com. She's the author of The Language of Fashion Design, which I read and is awesome. And she taught fashion design from draping and sewing to illustration and portfolio at Parsons for 20 years. Yay! She's a Brazilian jazz singer who loves to dance and play percussion, as well as music and movement for littles and caregivers. Also an advocate for mothers' rights in birth, education, and family choices. She's also trained as a doula. Boy, you are quite the multifaceted, talented person. My goodness, Laura, I am so glad to have you aboard for Refresh Daily Podcast. It is such a thrill to have you.
Thanks so much, Dawn.
It really, really is. I am so excited to have you aboard today. And we have some awesome questions that we want to tap into. And the first question that I want to ask you, Laura, as a vocalist and as a teacher, I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to have an empowered voice?
Dawn, this is so loaded.
I know.
Even. For every few years, every few months, every few days, that answer is changing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I was thinking before the podcast, I was thinking, wow, when I think of power, like empowered, the first thing I think of is always as power being something outside of me that's like an authority. Right? And I think that may just be my personality type, like follow the rules, good girl. Like I was always aware of power being something outside. And so for me, empowered always means being able to act and be myself without filtering it through what the powers that be tell me I should think, feel, say, or do. So I think,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I've noticed lately that a lot of my friends grew up in like sort of matriarchal family settings. And I, as a Catholic, raised Catholic and Italian, it was more like a patriarchal household.
Okay.
So, and these are very different orientations toward the world as women. So I don't know if your following is mostly women or if it's all mixed.
I would say that the majority of the folks who are viewing and listening are female, but we do have a few guys out there. We're waving at you.
Definitely about coming together in a great partnership. But I find that for me, empowerment means actually being able to really hear my own voice and accept it regardless of what I think a power or an authority would say about it. And that's an ongoing challenge.
Oh, I totally understand that. I really do. I understand what you mean by that. I do. Whether it be from the family situation or, perhaps a religious setting that you grew up in. I grew up in a very, I'll say strict kind of like Christian school kind of place. So I totally relate.
So that power.
Yes, exactly. Yes. It's almost like we have to give ourselves permission to allow ourselves to use that voice and feel good about it and feel like, hey, this is me. This is what I'm saying. And I'm okay with that. And I don't need to apologize for it.
Totally.
Yes, exactly.
I think for so long, music was a way that I could make something that was beautiful. So I did feel expressed, but it was always acceptable as well because it was beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love celebration. For me, it's all about celebration and joy.
Absolutely.
And I find it just in the past few years, I realized like there's a few little shadows, little dark spots that need me to love them so I can be fully prouder. Like, maybe it's just some little memory when I was little where someone who did have more power made me afraid to be myself. Like
I totally understand exactly what you mean by that. I really do.
Whether we're really little or even later in life, these things come up where we kind of thwarted, so we don't feel empowered. That's something I've been dealing with a lot as a mom, because the more kids you have, it's like you feel like you have to, you can't really fight for yourself the same ways because you have so many people to think about.
Yeah.
Empowered voice, I think, is me really stepping into my own. And I feel like recently, I just turned 46, and I feel like the past few years has been a real inner revolution for me.
Yeah. Well, I can see it reflected in the way you're putting yourself out there with your courses and as a vocalist, which I definitely want to tap into right now. I want to ask you, could you please share your musical story and let us know when you began to sing and what inspired you to sing and what music speaks to your soul, and just give us a good idea of where your musical history came from and all of that, because I know that.
I hope I can remember all the pieces, but above all, music is the thing, when music takes us out, puts us in another place, it takes us out of our heads and everything.
Oh, I totally agree. Totally agree.
Apparently my mom's father's brother, uncle, whatever, was like he was from Italy, but he moved to Denmark, and he was the conductor of the Danish Royal Orchestra.
Oh, wow. So you've got some good blood in
generations with that.
Ancestry. Wow.
Bella Bartok mentions him in his like collective letters. There's a letter about something like that. So I guess it comes down, maybe. I mean, but I believe anyway that's just in all of our lives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, so that's actually the point. That we all have this. But when I was little, okay, first of all, my mom wanted to be an opera singer. She went to school, but she didn't finish. And then she did sing opera and art songs, whatever, which is poetry, classical music that's very innovative and put to poetry. So it became more like impressionistic and the rigid older classical music. It's very, actually, a lot of it was very disturbing to me to hear as she got more and more into the modern stuff, because it was like dissonant and almost spooky. It wasn't pretty. I can appreciate it now, but as a kid, I was like, why? What? But she was a singer, so that was definitely, I was used to hearing all different kinds of sounds, especially with opera, like dramatic sounds. So
yes,
I think I always felt like it was safe to make any sounds I wanted. And she also sang in all the languages, at least all the European languages.
Wow,
that's opera. She didn't speak them all, but she kind of trained in all of them. So I think this appreciation of languages was there. Like, and
I know you speak more than English. I know you speak several languages, don't you?
Portuguese, French, and some Spanish.
Wow.
This much Fanti from.
Awesome. Wow, that is amazing.
So my dad went to medical school in Mexico, and that's where I was born, in Mexico City. And so that also gave me this idea of like, what's it like to live in another country and be an outsider? The stories I used to hear from them. Well, thing is, so I was raised in Connecticut, and my dad used to have these mariachi albums from Mexico. He also had a lot of world music in the house. But just for example, I have one very clear memory that comes up a lot for me lately of sitting on the steps near the living room, hearing this mariachi music blaring. And this wasn't, I don't know, you may think of like 3 people playing guitar at a Mexican restaurant, but these records sounded like 1,000 violins. It sounded like huge, like 100 people were playing. And everyone was, like They were howling and singing and playing, and it was so, when I heard that music, I was so aware that it was from somewhere else. And that there were emotions there that I had never seen or felt in the Northeast United States, Connecticut.
Yes.
And that I had those feelings too, but they were inaccessible, kind of. You know what I mean? And I think that whole idea of that there are other expressions and other feelings and other places just always pulled me so hard. So I think, you know, the Brazilian music represents that, all kinds of musics from around the world. I think I always wanted to be an ethnomusicologist, but you know, someone talked me out of it. But like, but I remember hearing that music and just saying to myself, there's a whole world out there, not just what I know.
Yeah.
And they're living another way, and it's so beautiful. So I think that was
such a rich history. My goodness. Yeah, that you got into that you were able to access that and hear that so early on in your childhood, and how that impacted you. And so what do you do now? How are you incorporating that music now into your everyday life?
That's interesting. Right now, so Brazilian jazz, Brazilian music, period, is a huge fascination of mine, because, you know, it's such a huge country. And because of the Portuguese, even though it's so huge and we have all these different regions with all these different roots and styles, you still have one language. I remember when I was obsessed with African music, it was like there were so many languages in there. I couldn't possibly learn them all.
Right.
And Portuguese, it was like something you could have all these styles, but still have one language to learn. So that
makes it easier. And I absolutely love listening to your vocalizing. Oh my gosh. You guys should check Laura Volpintesta. She has the most awesome just recordings that she puts on social media. You should go check her out, because I am so inspired by so many different things I've heard as she performs with the bands that she's in and such. Oh my gosh. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do with that?
Sure. So when I left when did I start playing with bands? You know, I always sang, but I was always in chorus. I never had a band. And I think that was part of that patriarchal thing, because my brother was always in a band.
There you go.
I sang, but I was always in chorus, and I didn't have that ownership. And then in college, I got into this salsa band, and then I started being on stage playing with the band. I was like, oh my gosh.
There we go.
You get to dance, you get to dress up, and you get to sing. Is there anything else?
No. Oh, I know. That's a totally immersive experience, no doubt. I could totally see that.
Poetry, it's all in there. So Connecticut, I was like, I've been in New York City. I can't believe I'm moving back to my hometown. And it ended up being at the time that there was this huge Brazilian influx. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm moving home, but I'm not. It's like there's a whole other country there. So I immersed myself in the music, and I found, you know, different people from different places had totally different, there were so many different kinds of music, and like folklore, which I think other people would just say, no, it's not folklore, it's culture. It's like, oh, well, what makes us call it folk? I don't know, but for me, it's roots. It's roots, and I don't feel like I grew up with roots. Maybe I just took my roots for granted. I don't know, because we're, you know, second generation immigrant. Like, I just felt like I was whatever, trying to be whatever we saw on TV, right?
Yeah, right.
In Brazil, I always feel like you can feel the earth, the roots of people in the music.
Yeah.
Traditions.
Yeah.
Myths and legends of processions and dances and costume and things that have been going on for centuries. That moves me so much, because I believe a lot of people like me crave and need that and don't have that.
The deep-rooted connection. Yeah.
You always hear so much problem with cultural appropriation, this conversation. And the one thing I have to say is that people like me, who got removed from their own cultural roots, crave the sacred, crave tradition and art, sacred art and things. And of course, you know, we're trying to reclaim that for ourselves. That's what I think that's about.
That's really awesome. Wow, what a rich history and what a rich perspective on the kind of music that really moves you and what it means to you. I know I love watching you perform it because I can see the essence of what's coming out, even though I may not understand what I'm hearing, because when you're singing in Brazilian, I don't know the language, but it's still so beautiful the way you portray it.
Thank you.
I love it.
It really releases everything in me that I feel like I can't express in my everyday life, in my culture. So the movement, the dance is built in. All those musics are dance based. Like, everything. And when I move, I feel so good. When we move, we feel beautiful from the inside.
Oh yeah.
You know, and when you see people dance, they always look beautiful. Right?
I love that.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. So in essence, your empowered voice really immerses you fully, not just with your voice, but with who you are. Totally. From your heart and from your soul. That is a powerful place to be. I can see why that would be so important to you. You
know, with your music and art, the same thing, like you get into that single focus, full immersion experience of connection and joy that.
Yes, exactly. I know. Happens for me whenever I play my tambourine.
We all deserve that.
Oh, I know. I totally understand what it feels like to connect with myself, with spirit, and just be able to move my body and just sing from my heart, especially the songs that I've been given, you know, in my heart. So I totally understand what you're talking about on that end. I really do. It's so, so inspiring and immersive.
Like every human deserves to cultivate that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. So let's switch a little bit now to your time in art school, because I know you went to art school and did fashion illustration and stuff and such. Why don't you give us a little tidbit on how that had an impact on your creative voice and what that discovery process was like?
It's funny because I'm someone who will complain a lot about how schools kind of control people, blah, 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 blah. But my first year of college at design school in New York City was the bomb. I've not a single bad thing to say. That first year was incredible because I was in New York City. Oh, there was so much to see. Every kind of people were everywhere. The buildings, the music, the smells, you know, I just felt so alive. Alive. And there was no end of things to explore, you know. And the music I went there to study art, and the music was everywhere. So
yeah, there you go. So it comes right back to that again for you. Absolutely. Yay.
But the great thing and it's kind of the mission of my business now that I can't get away from, was like, I could never draw. I mean, I would try to draw things and I couldn't, but I got deep, immense pleasure from like doodling in class. I mean, it's something like everybody does. They doodle because it's pleasurable. This is my new thing, only for a few months now, is like pleasure.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Yes.
It's a God-given gift. You know, it's a voice. It's divine, not to be shunned because it's
absolutely
divine.
Yes. Yeah, that's, you know, you just hit on something really important, Laura, that we shouldn't shun something just because it's fun. Exactly. That's the whole point. It's like, if you're not having fun, something's wrong. That is such a powerful cue and clue that we're going in the right direction with it. Absolutely. How much fun
is that? Me cry because this is it. But honestly, if there's anything I ever teach, I don't care. People learn fashion, whatever. I just want them to learn again that it's okay to have fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
very much about this inner child. Like, I understand why we learned whatever we learned when we were younger, and that there's like an in-between stage where you're out in the world feeling, testing it out. But now that I'm 46, I am strong enough to stick up for the little girl, and the little girl has all the answers to every question I have.
That's
Because she
amazing.
knows what's fun.
Yes.
She's good. She knows what she wants. She knows who she is. But she was afraid because she depended on so many people and institutions to run her life. So I was very fortunate when I got to school. I wasn't good enough to like just get in because I'd never taken art. Like, they were like, you can come to our school, but you have to take a 5-week summer course in drawing. So I got this class, and it was like 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, or 4 or 5 days a week for 5 weeks, drawing mostly nude models. Teacher who just, there are no accidents in life, I guess. I got there and I just felt so at home. And in an instant, like on day one, he undid everything that had held me back my whole life. And I didn't even know it was holding me back.
Wow.
And I think that's what empowerment, we often don't know what's holding us back. Or we just change it, right?
Yeah, I know. It's like a subconscious thing that you're not realizing that you're tapping into that. Yeah, exactly.
In the tank. We don't know what's holding us. You know, that's why we need teachers or someone who's one step outside. So what he taught us very quickly was like basically to make a mess. You know, he said the model's gonna take 5-second poses, and you're like, well, what could I possibly do in 5 seconds? And then we're gonna like smudge the paper up with our hand and then do another one and another. And you're not controlling anything. You're only feeling. And then you're messy. Your hands are black and you got a smudge on your nose. And you're having like a full body experience.
Here we go again. There we go. Yeah.
Embody. Isn't that like a new buzzword now that I have been like, what do they mean? Embodiment.
Yes, that's exactly right, Laura. We are touching on something really profound here. Everything keeps coming back to that full embodiment, which is where the empowered voice comes from. Exactly. That's amazing. I love that. I love that.
Me too.
So as a teacher with your art students that you have not only in person at Parsons, but also online with your fashion illustration tribe. I will get that straight. Fashion illustration tribe. There you go.
Sorry.
I know I get tripped up on the illustration word. Why I do, I have no idea. But anyway, so yes, the thing with you being a teacher and helping your students tap into that creative voice and feel empowered and have fun. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's so important to you as a teacher?
I think I'm on too much of a mission because I never questioned school as a kid. You know, I was just be a good girl, do your stuff. I was always trying to be good and I was never good enough. There was always that one girl, 10 girls that's smarter, cuter, funnier, they sang better, they draw better, they memorize better, they're better. You know what I mean? Your whole life being like, I know I'm great at something, but I'm just not good enough at anything, right? Here's my thing, kind of relates to the homeschooling thing, is who decided to sort children by age and put them in a competitive setting from age 5? Like, we aren't meant to be sorted by age, because even by age, some 7-year-olds are here, some 7-year-olds are here in one thing, and then that same 7-year-old is here in something else. The other ones, it's never that someone, you know, we start to believe people are better or worse, which we deep down know isn't even true. That's our truth. We know we're all the same. And so it's like, my thing is to undo that competitive setting is really important, to get that out of the room and realize that whatever you're learning, you're actually, in spite of whatever the subject is, the setting you're learning in is actually teaching you who you are. And you should pay attention to what that institution is telling you you are. Because
Mm.
it's either telling you that you are the leader of your experience and you're here to get what you need, or it's teaching you that you got to play by my rules and I rule you and I own you and you better please me. That's a very different environment. So sometimes we're so busy thinking we're learning the subject that we don't realize that we're learning who we are, and that I think educational settings have a responsibility to own up to who they're teaching students they are.
Mm.
And the student should be like, aren't education places actually here to serve the student? Aren't doctors there to serve the patient? But
Right.
we tend to see them as authorities and say, I'll do whatever you say because I know you're going to get me a job, you're going to make me better, you're going to, heal me. Well, actually, you are the empowered individual. These people you've hired as a team to help you, not to please, like, I'm going to pay you and I'm going to please you. It's like, wait a minute. It's a two-way street. And I think there may be a lot of people who never have a problem with that. But for me, I was always feeling like I was, I think I may have lost your question.
Oh, the question was why it's so important for your students to tap into their creative voice.
Oh.
Yes.
So that's when you get to remember, like, oh, what do I feel?
Yes.
I having a feeling now, if everyone else steps out of the way, where am I now? So that's your creative voice is really your connection to the divine, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Bam, end of story.
Yes.
What's being said to me? What needs to be said? How am I being voiced? Because you kind of step out of the way. It feels good, but you're kind of like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm being done.
Right.
Read, sung, drawn, right? You create these art pieces, but you're along for the ride.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that. It's like you get into this place where you're like a vessel rather than you being in control of what you're doing. Once you get into that zone and get away from the fear of whether or not you're going to be good enough or how you compare to the other students, you just get into that zone. And then before you know it, things are flowing and your whole entire process is not something that you're controlling. It's something that's coming through you as a vessel. I understand that fully. I know what that feels like as an artist. So
it's so wonderful to be chatting with you because you're right there. Because empowerment is love. I mean, when you're in a love state, a flow state, a joy state, you are open to all that. But when you're afraid, it's very hard to open up to that because everything is contracted.
Yes, exactly. Fear is a contracting emotion, whereas feeling open and expansive and confident, it takes practice. You have to give yourself permission, so to speak, to take that time to really tap into that zone and become that vessel and not be afraid of it, but instead actually really look forward to that whole process. I totally understand that.
I believe the empowerment is, you keep using the word permission, and that's so powerful because where did we even learn to ask for permission, right? And I just feel that schooling, and it all makes sense why it had to be that way. How do you, control 25 kids?
Yeah, exactly.
But we're still, I couldn't believe at 30, 40, 45, still asking for so many permissions that are right. In a way, I'm like, I really want this to be different for my daughters. It's exhausting to wait.
It is a very challenging aspect in our culture and in the schools today. I totally understand what you mean by that. Even with boys too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Granted, when you're acting, when you're making choices from love, and self-doubt to me is not empowering.
No, that's where you second guess yourself and you wonder, should I even be doing this? Should I bother? Exactly. And that's what I love about you, Laura. If you guys ever see Laura's Instagram feed and her stories and her Facebook, Oh my gosh. She is just so full of joy and love toward her students and toward the people who watch her stuff. And she talks to them like, I want you to find your creative power. Absolutely. Tap into the joy and love of it. I love that whole process that you show, Laura. That's what inspires me. You inspire me when you do that. Absolutely. Master of her craft, but also it comes right from the heart. That's what really makes the difference as a teacher, especially. And I know what it's like to have teachers who inspire you. And of course, you've inspired me as a teacher too. I actually took your course several years ago. So I totally can tap into that as well. But I understand what it means to have a teacher in your life who really inspires you and makes you feel like you're ready to roll with it, you know? And I think it's so important.
Yeah, I have like blind. For one thing, it's very easy for me to see the person's potential that they can't see because we're ourselves. That's how we meet each other. That's why I say, you know, when two or more people are together in a room, I'm with them. You know.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
We all need each other. We're all connected. But when you believe in yourself, or someone believes in you, or you have that support, you're capable of so much more. So I find, especially with arts, you know, especially with fashion, geez, with voice, these are all things where people want something beautiful. And then they start judging their baby steps. You know, they take their first step and they're like, I'm horrified. So in that moment, they're judging themselves and they're not accepting of themselves. And it sets up, you know, that's the most painful place to be, right? Rejecting yourself.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like even though I can teach all these skills, like whatever, the real point is to keep bringing you back to loving yourself in the process.
There you go. Love yourself from the inside out. That's the perfect place to start. Absolutely. So, Laura, I wanted to ask you something. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something else?
I just wanted to say that art study will always bring you up to that inner critic, and then that gives you that opportunity to always heal the self, the relationship to the self. It's a perfect playground.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I totally agree with you on that. Absolutely. Creativity and just giving yourself that space to create and get into that vessel place where it's just flowing. Absolutely. Awesome. I wanted to also ask you, aside from your music and your art and all those things that you fully embody, as we've been talking about up to this point, are there any other activities that you engage in your creative spiritual practice that you'd like to share? Anything else that our audience might be inspired by?
I guess dance probably goes with it. I'm always reading, listening, learning, expanding, and I'm still always learning to love myself more.
Oh, absolutely. Aren't we all?
The more I love myself, the more I realize how much I didn't and thought I did, and then it's more and more. You know? I don't know if that's probably not. So I do spend a lot of time reading and being with children.
Spending time with children.
Yeah, I have my youngest is 9. My others are pretty much, I can't really call them children anymore.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I love adorable Angelina. She is so sweet.
Thanks
love that little girl.
It's beautiful to me that a lot of you have watched her grow.
Yes.
Via live stream, and that means a lot to me, actually.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's fun, it's dynamic, and it's real, and even a little bit raw as we share with each other, you know, on the home front. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful.
My greatest teacher, because she's very assertive and self-knowing, and like I'm always just like, oh. And it makes me realize too that some people are really just born with certain orientation and others have other personality. I have 3 kids and they're all such different personalities.
You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say something here about that concerning you as a mother, because in essence, she's probably picking up on that empowerment from what she sees you doing too. Absolutely, with you teaching and showing your skills and teaching other people how to tap into their creative voice and into their, what you call their birthright, and art as their birthright. Yeah, exactly. She's seeing all this, especially with the unschooling. You know, she's in your presence there. So you're being a really great example of what that means and what that looks like. So
I think I'm so sensitive to the judgments I got when I was little that I really try to, and this includes, I try not to tell my kids I'm proud of them either. I feel like either way, you're getting kind of, it's a little bit manipulating. Like, I just notice every time I want to sometimes be like, because I used to like it when my parents would be like, wow, I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you'd be like, oh, that feels so conditional. So I'm trying to set up like, you're just awesome, okay?
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't want her to feel like she has to do cartwheels to somebody.
Yeah, she can just be herself and feel free and not have any condition or any like, oh, well, should I do that again kind of thing. Rather, just being the person that she is.
Yeah.
I totally embrace that. Yes, absolutely.
Spending time with children, even children I don't know now, it's such a great mirror for me. And I think that's because I'm bringing my child back more and more. I had to learn a song a few months ago, and the lyrics to the song, I had to memorize them. It was in Portuguese. I wish it was in English so everyone could hear it, But I was like, wow, his story was exactly about that. He's like, there's a little boy who lives in my heart, because the song was written by a man. Every time the world gets dark, that little boy takes my hand, and he tells me about all the good things that in the world that, like goodness and courage and love and friendship. And like, it's such a beautiful song. And that song really sliced right through. Like, that song just branded me. Like, this is the next chapter of my life. It's that little girl is coming out.
That's right. We are championing our inner child.
What, 30 years of your life, you hear this phrase, inner child. Yeah, whatever. And all of a sudden one day you're like, inner child.
Yeah, and then you actually tap into it and you're like, oh, so that's what they've been talking about all this time.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. That is awesome. Do you have a word of encouragement for our audience, Laura, that can kind of give them an idea of the action that they can take to kind of create that path to joy that leads to an empowered voice? What would you tell our audience?
Not just one word, but what you had said, because you reacted so nicely to it too, I'm going to go with this, where, don't resist your pleasure. Like, we even were taught, someone I once heard this quote, suffering doesn't get you something. Like, on some level, I learned that maybe in the kind of church I was in as a kid or something, or I was in the depression. I don't know, but just this thought of like, I don't need to suffer to get something. What if my good feeling would get me what I want? What if my good feelings can lead the way? What if that's my GPS?
Yes. No, I totally understand what you're saying. It's like the higher you vibrate, the more aligned you are with who you are. And those good feelings, those feelings of love and of passion and alignment and just feeling like you're in the groove with your creativity. Oh, absolutely, yes.
Word for today, it's groove.
Get in the groove. There you go. And don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to tap into that creative essence and power that is available to all of us, because next thing you know, you feel like your voice is empowered and that you've got something to say.
Because at some point when we were little, we were probably doing something fun that was inconvenient for someone else. And we're like, stop! And at some point you started to think that your instincts weren't good and that you needed to rein it in, but you really, really deserve, like, your good feelings are there for your good.
Yes, absolutely.
I think maybe in our early 20s, we have to we have to touch the fire, get burned a few times. Really don't want to go. I'm not going to discount that, but
so great feelings, tapping in and giving yourself permission to create especially when things are really working for you and you're feeling good.
And
Absolutely.
our body, this is the newest piece, Riza. Our body is created to speak to us, but we have to listen. So
Yep.
only recently I'm really noticing when I have any emotion, is it my heart that's tight? I'm talking about more the negative ones. Is it in my solar plexus, like right under my rib? Is it my, like, where do I actually feel the emotion? Even just trying to locate it helps me feel my emotion more, because I think I rolled over them for a long time. The unpleasant ones, because joy, yeah, joy is great. But when I'm having when I walk into a room or I'm with a person that I'm not having a good feeling, I'm listening more to my physical response and letting that be like something I can count on. Maybe
yes, that's your intuition telling you something, speaking through your body. That's what that is. Yeah.
I didn't do that for most of my life. I really, like, it was there and I just.
Yep, exactly. I know it's easy to discount it because we don't know for sure where it's coming from or why we're feeling it. And then we second guess ourselves. So we wonder, why was I feeling like that? That was kind of odd. But when we start to train ourselves and think, you know what, my body is speaking to me for a reason, and I really need to pay attention to what it's telling me and not be afraid to put up the boundaries when I need to, and also to take down the walls when I know it's appropriate to do so. Absolutely.
I think the joy lovers like you and me, I love when there's no boundaries. I just love.
Oh yeah, where the sky is the limit and you're open and expansive and you have no idea where it's going to lead you, and you're just doing a happy dance and you just can't wait to get where you want to go. And the whole process is just joy. I totally understand that. Yes, absolutely. Laura, I am so happy, so pleased that you have joined me today for Refresh Daily Podcast, for the episode, An Empowered Voice. It has been such a delight to hear your story. Thank you so much for sharing from your heart and from your inner child. Yes, absolutely. It's been delightful. Can you tell people where they can find you?
Also, I'm on Instagram like every day, and that's just my name, Laura Volpintesta.
There you go. There you go. Let me spell that for everybody. It's VLLPINTESTA. That is how you spell Laura's last name. And I just absolutely adore her on Instagram. She's on Facebook too, in case you want to check her out there as well. And if you're interested in a fashion, illustration, and design teacher, she is your go-to lady. Absolutely. She is a master of her craft. And do go and listen to some of her music and her vocals and everything. Oh my gosh, she will inspire you. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and for listening and watching. And may joy find you in the most unexpected places.